Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money in the Lawn, my FM 101.3, with your host, Jay Marsden from the Marsden Law Group, and I'm John Drohan from Main Effort Financial, and we, of course, are joined, as always, as mostly always, but, you know, only on the good
mostly
shows.
Always. Mostly kind of always.
Christian Bidet from the House and Cable Access TV, so kindly to make us look 14 pounds heavier than we really are.
It's a camera.
Yeah?
Camera adds 30.
Plus 30.
Camera adds 30.
And,
Camera
you know,
adds 30.
there's some kind of like multiple, I think, that happens once you go over the age of 50.
Well, it's funny. When I see people outside of the studio, they say, geez, you know, I see you on TV all the time.
You look great.
I didn't realize in real life, I mean, you're a bit of a marathoner. That's the first word that comes to mind. First word that comes to mind. You look
How far did you run today?
You look a lot faster in real life than you do on TV. That's right.
Don't
That's
say
exactly
you
right.
you are a marathoner.
I am three-time marathoner.
Three-time
Boston Marathon
Boston
attendee.
Marathon. So you're kind of
finisher.
like a Boston Marathon. You're like that's like old hat to you. Like
We may have talked about this on the show before, but I'll talk about it again because it's about me, my favorite subject. That Boston, the marathon, you know, we've talked about this before, right? You may love the Red Sox. You're never going to play left field. You might think you are. You might bring your glove to the game, right? Hope they call you up, right?
This is Jay. For those of you who've missed this before, this is his sales pitch on why you need to do the marathon if you live in Boston.
Pick any Boston sporting event, right? You're never going to suit up for the Celts, although given the way things may or may not go, they might need your help. Sox definitely could have used you this year. Bruins, time will tell. Pats, don't even put on your pads. They don't need right now any help down in Foxborough, right? So you're never going to play, but you can. For whether you run it bandit or whether you run, I'm not advocating that, whether you run bandit or you run
Do they let
legit,
you run bandit anymore?
Not as much. No, they kind of frown on that now, right? So, but the idea is the Boston Marathon is the one of the few, if the only, Boston sporting events that you can actually take part in as a legit competitor.
Yeah.
I mean, you get all the trappings of a Boston athlete for that one day.
You might not win. However,
you might not. Yep.
We're not saying that you're not going to win.
Nope.
But you might not win, and if you don't, that's okay. You might not even win for your age group.
But the marathon is such a quintessential Boston event. If you've ever harbored, and this is the right time to be thinking about this for all of you out there who harbor a little bit of a glimmer of I'd like to do that. This is the time. If you've ever thought about doing it, I highly, highly encourage it. The training is miserable. Not going to lie to you. The training is miserable. But if you ever thought about running it, it is absolutely worth its weight in gold. Worth its weight in gold.
You're 6.5 months out.
The experience is second to none. It is just a tremendous. It's an opportunity to literally be one with all the other Boston athletes. It's the equivalent of catching passes from Brady down in Foxborough and being on the team for the day. It's the equivalent of playing catch with Big Papi, right?
It's the equivalent of hitting that three-pointer, right, against the Milwaukee Bucks. To send it into overtime from the outlet pass from Kevin McHale.
Let's think about this for 1 second. If I said to you, John, quick question, for either just by filling out a piece of paper or by making a donation, if you could suit up for the Celtics and sit on the bench for a game.
Go to practice.
No. I'm saying game day. It's game day.
Yeah.
It's game day. Marathon practice is all this 6 months leading up to it. If I said to you, for however the process would work, and it wouldn't be like, you know, it's not $1 million. If I said to you, here, fill this form out or donate some money, raise some money for a great charity, you can get to fill in the blank. We'll put you in a Pats uniform for the day. You get to be part of the day. You get to stand around on the sidelines. By the way, you're never going in. You're never going in.
I'm not going to Rudy. I'm not going to get in.
Nope, you're never going in.
Play.
But you know what? And maybe you do get in for one play. But either way.
Special teams.
Either way, if I said to you, you can do this. You can be on the bench for a Celtics game. You can sit in the dugout for a Sox game. The whole game. Just sit there. Just commiserate with everybody. Eat some chicken. Drink some beer. You know, whatever you want to do. Would you do it? Would you do it?
I would do it.
And the answer is that's right. Of course, the answer is yes. The answer is no question. It's yes. The marathon is that event.
Exactly,
you get to be part of the event. You get to finish the event. They hand you a medal.
People cheer for you.
You get people cheer for you. They cheer for you. By the way, they cheer for you as loudly as they cheer for the guy who wins it.
That's right.
right?
That's
So
right.
I mean, it's
Actually, and in actuality, they will probably cheer for you longer than the guy who
Oh.
wins it, because as you're coming running at at a pace that is probably at equivalent of snail's pace, so you're going to have the person will have a long time to cheer for you, as opposed to the guy who wins
it's
it.
like it's like sitting in the dugout for 2 Red Sox games, right? Because you'll probably be there. It'll take you twice as long. So if you're running the marathon for 5 hours,
Take your time.
you will get your money's worth. First of all, you'll get a lot of cheering. But there is that day in this city.
There may not be a lot of Gatorade left at the finish line, because mostly all the other 300,000 people.
You handle we handled the race. We handled the race a little differently. At the end of the race, when we got our medals and we got those crazy blankets.
Yep.
And by the way, those blankets, it's like a ticket to just walk around the city, and everybody is like, "Oh my God, you did the marathon! Fantastic!" So we would go to a local Irish establishment, a local pub, if you will. And then we would rehydrate right after the race for a good long time. And
great idea.
Yep, that's
what
right.
could go wrong?
That's right. What's that? That's in all the medical textbooks.
How old were you when you ran the marathon?
I ran it my first 3 years of law school, so I was 30, 31, and 32.
So right in
my prime.
So wait, you ran it when you were 32. So I ran the Boston Marathon. So 2002. Right?
No, 2002 was the last year I was going to run it.
Oh.
And that was my last year of law school. My goal had been to run all 4 years of law school. And then, go figure, we had a kid. And that ruined, on so many lists, that just made things different.
You resigned as a professional athlete. Your athleticism done.
It wasn't the resigning as a professional athlete, but I remember coming home, and I remember, so I'm ramping up to like get the training going. And my daughter was born Christmas Eve in 2001, and so I remember gearing up for the 2002 marathon, my last year of law school. And I remember coming home thinking to myself, I'm not sure it's fair for me to be at the library all day studying. My wife's home with a newborn. I roll in the door at whatever time I roll in the door, and I'm like, "Hey, honey, how was your day? Mine was great. Look, can't talk right now. Got to go run for an hour and a half over the river. When I get back, we can kind of catch up."
Yeah, we'll catch up, and I'll maybe I can peek in at my sleeping dog.
Maybe I'll help out the baby that you've been with for 23 and a half hours
again?
all day today. That's right. Take a picture and send it to me. So there was the training schedule. I had to focus on a different marathon.
So finally,
the parental marathon, which took over, not the marathon.
So in this case, the little voice that lives behind your head, right? You listen to him. He's like, hey, don't go running. You need to.
Great idea. Great idea. Go get him, Tiger.
Probably better if you stay here.
You want to choose a different path.
You know what? Yeah, you can run on Saturday. Run 7 strong miles. And you're good.
That's right. That's right. Your wife's been alone with the baby all day. That's the last thing what she wants is more time with the baby.
Yeah,
that's right. More
She's
time.
Not getting enough.
That's right. So if you ever thought about doing it, today's show is not about the marathon, but do it.
It sure is now.
Now's your time. Lace those sneakers up. Let's go.
So and probably in the to segue into what we were going to talk about today.
Please.
The marathon. It's not a bad segue into the idea of. So, one of the things that I wanted to address, and this has kind of come up during the week. And we'll dive into this once we go to our break. But during the week, I've had different clients come in, and clients at different stages of their savings life, of their planning. So you have this. There's this. The idea of. We always talk about how kind of all roads lead to retirement, and retirement it's a long way away, but it's kind of once you get into retirement, and we've addressed we've kind of come at it from different angles on the show, but retirement, if God willing, and if you're lucky, retirement itself is going to feel not unlike a marathon, and if it does, that means you're living a long time.
Yeah.
And so we're a 20, you as a young 25-year-old spry, guy working at Fidelity who's banking money into his 401k because that's all he knows how to do. You're thinking, I am saving for that marathon. It's a marathon right now to get to my retirement. And I'm saving. So the people who do that, they kind of get to retirement, and then it's almost like it's not like that the race is over.
No.
That race
No.
is over, but it's like they have to start training for the new one, right?
yeah,
They have to start
yeah.
training for the new
Some
marathon.
might say this is the heartbreak hill of that entire plan. That's
Well,
right.
I mean, I look at it a little bit differently, and I'm sure you look at it a bit differently, because if somebody comes into your office and says, I'm 60 years old, you know what, I'm probably going to be checking out here within,
Right.
unless God forbid they have some sort of some ailment, but God forbid I'm going to I think I'm going to be checking out, and this always cracks me up. Like, I'm going to be checking out, I won't live past 75, and I'm like, well, okay, you're right, obviously. In the very unlikely event that you do live past 75, which most likely you will, unless, barring some, Skylab.
Depends. Family history, sure. Yeah.
So that's why we have to look at this is a long race. Retirement isn't just I got all my money and now I start living. Retirement's a long race. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit today.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that after the break. Absolutely.
And your marathon segue was perfect. It's almost as if we planned this. Well, we actually did plan something.
Oh, and if you want to send us an email to moneyinthelaw.net, you can pick who you think in a foot race in the parking lot would win, John or myself, and based on how many responses we get, Christian could film that, and it could be a Money in the Law foot race. So that we'll keep that out there as a possibility. And
I'm 3 months older than you. 3 solid long months, right?
I'm not
3 months older, so I have to.
I'm not giving you steps. I'm not giving you steps.
Don't I get a different starting block?
No. You marched for a living. I'm not giving you any steps. All right, you might know what's going on.
All right, we'll talk about this and the marathon of retirement when we come back from our break on my FM 101.3 Money in the Law.
And we're back. Money in the Law, my FM 101.3. Jay Fleet of Foot Marsden for the Marsden Law Group. John the Turtle.
I ran in 2 marathons. But I'm just saying I ran. So it's a little bit different though. So I ran 2 marathons in the same year, and that was the end of it. Well, I mean, you get it. Like when you're kind of training for it, right?
Pounding on your body.
Well,
yes.
but once you've kind of got all the mileage all built up. At least that's what they told me, right? You get all the mileage. Like, hey, you know what? You might as well, if you feel up to it, you might as well do another one.
That's the Boston-New York nexus, right? A lot of people say, well, you trained for Boston.
Yeah.
You finished Boston in April. Take a little bit of a break. Don't hang your shoes up. But then, as the summer gets going, keep your training schedule regimen light, because you got and you got New York in November, and you're well positioned to segue into New York.
Well, the problem with me is that my first marathon was the 2002 Boston Marathon.
Go.
And it was awful. Like, it was unlike you, who have had this Eucharistic experience of how wonderful and awesome. Like, my first, it was absolutely awful.
Well, I was blessed. I was working at that small mutual fund company in town, and one of my cube mates at that so-called previously referenced organization was a legit 2:18 marathon.
Yeah, he's
right. He was the real deal, right?
So,
and he was a
tell
coach.
You what you're doing wrong.
And he was a coach, and he sat down. And this is a shout out to WF Newhall, wherever you are. One of the nicest guys I've ever met.
Whiskey Foxtrot Newhall
on the planet. Super guy. WF Newhall from Marblehead, Mass.
If you're running right now, keep looking your rearview mirror. I'll be right behind you.
Swampscott's favorite son. The word about town is, WF would go run these road races around town up on the North Shore, and he would run to the road race, right?
Yeah.
And he'd win the race. And then they hand him a trophy, and he'd run home with the trophy, right?
Guys like that.
Guy was a soup. And again,
whatever.
The nicest guy on the planet. Wonderful wife, wonderful family. His wife Amy, his daughter Piper. Nicest people on the planet. So WF, right, coached everybody in the office. He would sit down and he wrote up for every single guy. I ran with a bunch of guys at Fidelity because it's easier to work out while you're at Fidelity than it is to work. So he would write up a training regimen for every one of us, and the training regimen was
personalized training regimen,
and it was designed for finishing the marathon, but more importantly, enjoying the marathon.
Finishing it and being able to walk to the car.
Yep, and see it and experience it and not get carried off the finish line. And he was spot on. So, Coach, wherever you are, thank you very much for all your efforts. He's a good man. He's a good man.
Yeah. So I didn't have a coach. I had some guy who said, "Hey, I can get you a number if you raise this much money," and I was
that
like,
guy.
"Great,
The
yeah."
number guy.
So I got my number and I ran my marathon. And so Heartbreak Hill was always like and my problem was I wasn't ready, right?
Yeah.
So. But I thought, I ran. I was a runner, right? I could run.
It's running.
Running
That's
my
running.
whole.
That's
I run
running.
for my
One foot
career,
in front
right?
of the other. I grew up running.
So, but never. And it's funny because when I was in the Army, a guy who was a marathoner came to our unit, and he outranked me. He was a battalion executive officer, and I'm like, I run all the time. All right, sir, I run. And he goes, "You guys, have you ever run any distance?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I ran 10 miles like 2 weeks ago." And he's like, No. I mean like distance. Like, have you ever run a marathon? I'm like, no, why would I do that? It's, why? And he goes, okay. And that's all he said. And sure as the sun came up the next day, we went running. We went running for I think it was 13 miles the next day. And it was like nothing I've ever done before. And then, for those of you who have trained for a marathon, 13-mile run that's a short training run.
Yep, that's right.
Easy.
That's right.
It's a drop in the bucket.
You're doing one of those a week, starting right around February.
So we talk about. So you talk about it's like, oh, Heartbreak Hill. For me, by the time I got to Heartbreak Hill, my heart was already broken. There was nothing. There was no heart left to break, right?
Yep.
And it was at Newton Wellesley. Newton Wellesley. I'm like, oh, this has got to be Heartbreak Hill. This has got to be Heartbreak Hill. I'm like, and old ladies going by me, and they're like, no, this is it. You're not there yet.
It's the first of a series, my friend. This is how
going.
it works. Yeah,
Keep going.
Yeah.
So
best advice I ever got at the marathon was when you turn the corner onto Beacon Street, right? You can see the Citgo sign from almost Cleveland Circle. So you think that you have like Shangri-La'd it, right?
We're here.
Like you're done. And somebody said to me, look, they said, just so you don't get yourself all excited, you turn the corner at Mary Ann's in Cleveland Circle, it's about a 4.2-mile run from there. It's the Bataan Death March.
Oh, yeah.
Right? From that point all the way down Beacon Street.
It's a long
it
4.2. You look at your watch all you want. Yeah.
I mean, flat as a board, which is great, but it's you think, oh, there's the Citgo sign. I'm so close. Why does it not get any bigger? How come it's still tiny?
Yeah,
right?
Because you're not really running fast. You're not moving fast.
That's
yet.
right. That's right.
That kid on the tricycle is going faster than you.
That's right. So speaking of marathons, talk about the retirement marathon, and I agree with you. It is a marathon. And like every marathon, it's all about the training. It's all about the planning. It's all about the execution. Now, just like on those cold February days where you had to get up and put in your 7-mile run when it was 6-ish degrees out and cold and icy and all that stuff, and you don't want to do it, right? You don't want to do it, right? It's painful, right? Planning for the retirement marathon, it's the same way. Yes, the money that you would put in your 401k would be much more enjoyable if you put it into a hot tub or a boat or anything, or a trip to the Keys, right? Yeah. Anything. That would be more fun. But that's not going to help you get through the marathon, right? So you need to keep that in mind and focus on the end game. You gotta work your plan. You gotta run your plan, right? What do you run? Whatever your training plan is, just run your plan. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Train for your race.
Yeah, that's great, and that's great advice because every not unlike the marathon. I love the analogies here. Not unlike the marathon, everybody's marathon is different, right?
Yeah.
So everybody is gonna, and it's gonna depend on how your stomach feels that day. It's gonna depend on how you slept the night before. It's gonna depend on how much preparation you did. How it's gonna depend on your psychological preparation. That's another thing, right? So people, we talk about retirement. Once people get into retirement, as you need to be prepared financially, right? You also need to be prepared emotionally, psychologically.
Mentally, you can be prepared mentally. Yes.
You have to. We've said this before on the show. You have to have a plan. You have to have a plan not only of kind of how I'm going to manage my finances, how I'm going to cover my costs and do the things I want to do, but you have to have a plan as to what, kind of just the same question we ask people, like, okay, here's where you are now. Where do you want to be in 5 years? What
right.
you wake up 5 years from now? What do you want to have happened?
Yep.
And that's no different than when you're 30 than when you're 65 or 70.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, a lot of times you ask an 85-year-old guy, where do you want to be in 5 years? He goes, hopefully right here. Hopefully, standing up. Right?
But think about it, right? The idea of working your plan, right? I mean, we talk about it a lot in the show. and it applies to so many things, right? You want to go off and be in business for yourself. What do you have to do? You got to come up with a business plan, right? You want to plan for your kids' college savings. You're going to sit down and you put your money into some type of savings plan, some type of 529 plan that's going to help you get there. You want to go and run the marathon. You want to build your house. You got to come up with a set of plans. You're going to start somewhere. You don't just start throwing up boards, right? You got to figure out what you're doing. And to your point, retirement savings is the same thing. And there's a financial component to your plan. There's a healthcare component to your plan. There's a mental, component to your plan. There's a geographic component to your plan.
Right.
What's your game plan? What do you want to do, right? This is all part and parcel of that, right? There's an employment aspect of your plan. Are you going to stay employed? Are you going to kind of be employed? Are you not going to be employed? Do you want to work? Do you not want to? There's all these aspects, and you may want to treat it like I guess I would say this. There's a lot of planning tools, we'll go back to this planning issue, where you can just go out and punch in a bunch of numbers, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. This is how much money you need to retire. It's $6 million or $3 million or $2 million, whatever that number is, okay? But to your point from earlier in this conversation, that's just one component of what you need to do.
It's one piece of this pizza.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And and I think, and we've talked about this before, again, I keep saying that, but to me, that's the fun part, right? Like, it doesn't, when you go out running with your friends and you go for it, it's not a training run, right? You go for a run, you talk about what's going on, you're running at a pace that's comfortable, you can have a conversation. That's enjoyable, right? That's different than, hey, I got my long run for the marathon. That's going to be about 20 miles, and I really got to have my head in the game because it's going to take me about 3.5 hours. That's different than a 5-mile fun run with your buddies, right?
Right.
So
you end up at Magoo's at the end.
Lifting a pint and celebrating the fact that you did some exercise. Now let's put it right all back on. But the idea of when you talk about your retirement, again, the numbers are part of it. But if you just focused on the numbers, it almost takes you away from. If every day of running was a training run, you wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
The training runs, when you get close to the goal, that's when you're really going to dial it up, right? First, October, for those of you who are going to go out and start running now, if you haven't run at all, it's going to be, 10 miles a week, right? A couple of 3.5 mile runs during the week, nothing crazy. And then obviously, as you get closer and closer, but when you get to March, that's the work, right?
March.
So when you get to
working,
you get to March, March, you're going to be running 50, 55 miles a week in March, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a 7-mile run every day, and then some, just to get to that number to build up the stamina. So think about if you're in your mid to late, let's call it your mid 50s, it's March, and in your retirement plan calendar, your running plan, it's March. You're going to be socking away some serious coin because this is it. You're almost at the finish line. It's all training runs from here on out, and so yes, but what's on the other side, right? It's really going to be, this is what's going to make the difference.
But you bring up a good point. You bring up the end, I count
every time, every point.
I count on it. The idea, the analogy of kind of how you're training, you're training as you're preparing for the marathon. You don't want it. It's hard, and there's going to be some days that are better than other days. And how is that much different than than times or periods in your life, right? So you could say look, I want to save as much as I can for retirement.
Sure.
So I get my job and I start at the mutual fund company, and I'm like, I can put away back then I could put away $12,000 into my 401k,
yeah.
$13,000 into my 401k. Well, wait a minute. I have X amount of dollars. I have X amount of money that I can use, but I really want to buy a house, and I know I'm going to need money to buy a house. So, in that kind of beginning stages of my preparation for my marathon, I'm not going to be. I'm not going to start running 10-mile runs, 12-mile runs, 15-mile runs.
No.
Because I can't afford it, right?
That's right.
Because I can't afford it. Physically, in the running analogy, I can't do it, but in the savings analogy, I may have to save for something else. I may not be able to commit the time or the resources to save just for retirement. But as I start to get closer, it's almost like did you write a paper on this or something? No. So, but as you get closer to retirement, just as you get closer to race day, the priority has to change a little bit, right?
right.
The priority. So when my priority was to buy my house, or my priority then changes to send my kids to college. Once my kids are done with college, and we say this in the office all the time. It's like, okay, now like you can see the barn, and I'm not trying to make you sound old, because you're not. If you're 50 or if you're 55 or 60 years old, to me, you're not old.
Right.
You're young.
Right.
You're almost there, right? You're almost getting ready to start the race. It's almost game time.
But you bring up a great point. This idea that if running is part of your life, right? Like a lot of people don't turn it off and turn it on, right? People are just runners, by nature. Oh, what do you what do you like
Jay's
to do?
Jay's a runner.
No, Jay hasn't run in a long time. But what do you like to do for exercise? Oh, I like to run. Great. Now that doesn't mean that you're running, to your point, a marathon a month or a marathon a week, right? Running, if you will, is part of your life. It's part of who you are, right? Might not be 7 days a week. For some people it is. They wake up and they start every morning with the 3 or 5 mile run,
guys.
right?
Yeah.
I used to be those guys. Not anymore. But those people, running is part of their life. Just like planning and saving for retirement becomes part of your life, right? You wake up every day and you go for a run, or you go for a run 3 or 4 days a week. Same thing. Retirement planning, retirement savings. You got to wake up and you got to be committed to the plan. And you got to, just like you said, you got to drag yourself out of bed on the days you don't want to go. Same thing for savings and retirement. You got to put that money away first, pay yourself first, save for yourself first, and put that money in there so that you take care of this on a regular basis. That's the way to do it.
And then, is your, we talked about your retirement plan, you talked about your marathon training plan. Same thing. Is it going to go exactly according to plan?
No.
Nope.
No.
It's not going to, right? So you say, okay, I'm going to save, each year I'm going to save, $20,000 towards my retirement. That's my goal, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to save, or $10,000 towards retirement, beginning at age 25, and by the time I hit age 65, I'll have X amount of dollars, because that's what I'm going to do.
And that's the stuff that you can control, right? That's making the choice to go for the run, right? Whether it's get up in the morning, whether it's go at night after work, but that's the part that you can control, to get up and just go for the run, right? Mm-hmm. Now, in addition to that, there's going to be things that you can't control that I think are going to be much like the direction you were going in, which is there's things that
it's
are
almost like he's reading. I don't even
things
need
that you
to
can't,
speak
things
here,
that you can't plan on, right?
right?
So, for example, you can't plan on getting injured, right? So you can't plan on the market being volatile, right? You can't plan on pulling a hamstring, or you can't plan on
losing your job,
tweaking your knee.
Yeah.
You can't plan on losing your job. You can't plan on watching the market respond to some crazy person tweeting all over the place, right? So there's things that are going to be out of your control. But what can you control? You can control that when those things are not an issue, that you are working your plan, that you get up and you go for the run. So you might have to your point, there'll be setbacks along the way.
Yep.
Those setbacks will be some market volatility and things like that. But the important part is that when you can, you get up, you go for the run. You eat better than you might normally be eating because you're in training. You dial it back, right? How many of your buddies were like, we're getting ready to run a marathon as they get older, not when they're young, because we're all bulletproof, and they're like, hey, how come you're not having 90 beers tonight? Well, because I either got to race tomorrow or I got to race this week,
and I have to run
get dehydrated.
15 miles tomorrow.
That's right. I got my long run. We used to hear this all the time. I got my long run tomorrow. There was one day that everybody was like, no fun, right? Oh, I got my long run tomorrow, so I got to dial it. I'm going to go home, going to get a good night's sleep, and then I'm going to get up and do my long run, right? So my goal was to always get my long run out of the way before St. Patrick's Day, because I knew there might be a little bit of recovery time on the back end of St. Patty's Day.
Right.
So you could always find me
out.
The week before St. Patty's Day, you would find me running up to Watertown. That was the approach. But again, you got to make those accommodations, and then you got to figure out sort of where it goes from there. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be back. We'll talk a little bit more about working this analogy, pretty much, as much as we can. We'll beat this analogy to death, and then we'll
take your questions.
We'll take your questions via moneyandthelaw.net.
Yeah, moneyandthelaw.net. All right, we'll be right back.
And we're back. Money the Law, My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden.
Sir WF Newhall.
Marsden Law Group.
You're on my
John
quote over
Drohan,
here.
Main Effort Financial, and Christian manning the con. And you were asking off the air, what was my buddy's name again? WF Newhall, Springfield College's finest. And like I said, super, super guy. Good people. Came to work with me at Fidelity. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story about WF. So I don't know him from Adam. He gets hired at Fidelity, and he gets hired at Fidelity. Like his first week at the job, is the week that I find out I got into law school, right? So this poor guy, you know, Fidelity, there's no privacy at Fidelity, right? So this poor guy stuck sitting in a cube next to me. I don't know him at all, and all he has to listen to is me calling everybody I knew under the sun to tell them that I was going to law school.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on? It's me. Hey, hey, got into Suffolk.
It's like
got
the
into
paper
Suffolk,
chase.
right?
Yeah.
All day long. Poor guy suffered through that. So he goes out, walking around at lunch one day, right?
Hey,
goes out
me.
and he says, he buys me a book, right? He bought 1L by Scott Turow. Tells you all about the first year of law school at Harvard. Writes a very nice description in it, right? Very, very, very poignant,
genuine guy,
genuine, solid stand-up guy. And he says to me, "Hey, he doesn't even know me at all. Hey, congratulations! I got this for you. I got.
I couldn't help but overhearing you not working.
That's right. That's right. Couldn't overhear you bringing the team down by not making any sales calls, calling all your buddies. But anyway, congratulations.
Great.
Very
Can't
nice
wait
book.
till you leave.
I still got it. Very poignant. Very poignant. And also, when the kids are little. And you get them like a blanket. They have their blankie. Everybody has a different name for it. He was the proprietor of the kids' two first original blankies.
He got you the...
When the kids were born, he was like, hey...
How come this guy's not a guest on our show?
We might have to get him. We'll have to go to Marblehead. We'll do it at Marblehead.
Yeah, we'll do it up there. We'll go running afterwards.
We'll go running afterwards.
Sure, that'll be fun.
Yep. So, guys would come in the morning and they'd say, how'd you go?
WF.
Now it gets to be a competition, right? You know, these sales guys in rooms like, hey, did you run today? I ran today. What time did you run today?
Yeah.
You're going to run at lunch?
How far did you go?
Oh, okay, that's great. Yeah, why'd you run at lunch? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, run at lunch.
Slacker.
Take your lunch.
Slacker. Yeah, run at lunch. That's great. So good stuff. But so talking about the retirement planning piece of it, which is like preparing and running a marathon.
So let's dive into this a little deeper. So one of the things that you could think about, and you could make an analogy to as well, is that so if I'm doing my running plan, right, and let's say something happened. Let's say I get sick. Let's say something happens and I have to I can't, nothing, it doesn't go according to plan, right? I don't get to do, let's say I don't feel well and I don't get to do, I was supposed to do a 17-mile run and I just can't do it. I do 10, I do 11. And that's, for the people who are training for, you kind of have to do you have to do these longer runs or you're going to set yourself up for failure. So, liken that to something happening where, like, we mentioned before the break, if you lose your job or or you have a family emergency or something happens, or and these things happen in your life all the time. They're called life events. It's called life, right? So things don't. So then what do you need to do? What do you do at that point? So, if it's a life event, then you may have to make an adjustment, right? You say, okay, well, I always thought I was going to retire at age, when I turned 66 in 2 months. And I could collect my, my full retirement Social Security, then that was going to be my retirement time. But now, because, my brother lost his house and he had to move in with me, or I lost my job and I was out of work for a year and a half. Now, how do I cancel the race, or do I change the race? Meaning, do I retire at a different time, maybe run a different race, or do I make changes? Do I train differently, right? For lack of a better, do I train different? Do I save differently? In order to try and sustain that goal? And that's what happens. That's how you do it, right? You look at your plan, and that's why. That's why people like you and I are in business, because that's what we do. We say, okay, we look at your plan and we say, okay, right now, based on what you're doing, I know this is how we originally drew it up, but because of market conditions or because of, you spending twice as much on a house that you originally thought you were going to, now you're not going to look like you did, like you thought you were going to do at age 66.
Right. So you're right. So you can change your plan. You got to do something different. And to your point, you're either going to run a different race, or you say to yourself, you know what? I was all geared up for Boston, and I get injured. Couldn't plan for it. But I still want to accomplish the goal. The goal is to run the marathon. The goal is to retire, right? So instead of running the marathon in April in Boston, I'm going to go back to this idea. I'm going to run New York in November, right?
Yep.
I'm going to put off my marathon until I'm better prepared for the marathon, just like you might put off your retirement plans or change your retirement plans to say, look, we wanted to retire at 65. That's not going to work for a whole host of reasons. Because we're not going to perform in retirement the way we want to perform in retirement. So we're going to push it off until 70. We're going to get a little bit more training under our belt, and we're going to be a little bit more prepared for the race, right? For the actual event itself. And that's how you would view it. That's the same exact way you would look at it.
It doesn't have to be a bad reason, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative reason at all, right?
No.
So use the example of so to get into the New York Marathon, it's a lottery, right? You can't
Nope.
you can't just sign up and so let's say that you've always wanted to run the New York Marathon because you're a native New Yorker, and your grandfather ran it, your father
You
ran
want
it.
to run through the boroughs with no cars.
So
It's a great way to see the city. Yep.
So
yep.
you've always wanted it's on your bucket list. It's one of your things that you want to do. And so now let's say that your number comes up on the lottery and you have that opportunity. So now you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, I may not. Why am I going to kill myself now and peak from my running time because because as Jay said, it's taxing, it's time consuming, it's time
Wear
that
and
you
tear.
could,
Yep.
yeah, it's time that you could spend doing other things. So that you may say, look, I'm gonna redirect this. I'm gonna change my plan. And it's the same thing. People may, if you use the retirement analogy, they may say, well, if I wait a year to start collecting Social Security as opposed to at 66, then I'll get this much more. And if I work for another year while all my kids are out of school and all I can do is and I can save, instead of saving $20,000, I'm going to save $80,000.
Yeah.
And that could be the difference of, like Jay said, what your retirement could look like. So and not unlike the analogy, like your retirement when you first start, like when your retirement first gets going, that's the beginning of the race. That's when you feel your best, right?
And also at some point, if you use that running analogy, at some point if you tweak your knee, let's say the marathon's April 19th, for example, you tweak your knee the beginning of April, right? And now you're all wigged out, right? You're like, oh my God, I tweaked my knee. It's
knee tweak.
It's too. My knees feeling a little. My knees feeling a little tweaky because I haven't run in a lot. Because I just finished March, which was like running madness, and I'm feeling a little.
My knee feels tweaky, and I didn't run.
I'm feeling like you're not young anymore, right? I'm feeling a little down on myself. I'm feeling a little beat up after getting through that push there. Well, the answer in many cases is, look, don't worry about it. Okay, if you don't run this week, you're fine.
Yeah.
You've already put
got enough in the bank.
the work. That's right. You've got enough money in the bank. You get enough training time in the bank. You have enough hours under your belt. You're right where you need to be. Instead of running, take some what we call active rest days, right? Don't run. Go use the treadmill. Go use the bike. Get your heart rate up. Just keep things moving. But you've done the work. Don't worry about it. You've made it. Retirement is the same way, right? At some point, you'll have won the game, right? Whether it's 2 million, whether it's 3 million, whatever that number is, for you, for your lifestyle, for running your race, at some point, you'll have won the game. And then when you win the game, and then if things go a little hinky, the market gets a little weird and kooky, and some of these things happen that are out of your control, you're not going to be worried about it.
Your portfolio gets a little tweaky.
That's right. Why? And you're not all that worried about it. Why? Because you've put in the time.
Right.
You've done the work, right? That's what makes the difference. You've done the work. Don't worry about it. You take your foot off the gas a little bit. It's going to be fine, and then things will get back on track. So again, this idea of it's really about one foot in front of the other. It's really about getting the training going and starting the process. That's really what gets you there.
So here's a question for you.
Fire away.
So
228. That was my number. That was my first year.
You ran a 2:28 marathon?
No, of course I didn't.
I was going to say, wow.
No. I'm actually impressed. I'm impressed that you thought for a second that there was actually a modicum of legitimacy.
I would be like, why are you not running a marathon this year?
Yeah. Nope.
2:28.
Nope.
Man.
Nope.
I bet he's just being modest, everybody. I bet it was like more like maybe it was like 2:31.
Yeah. A little slow, a little fast on that. Yep.
So here's a question for you. So and an excellent retirement analogy. So let's say, for whatever reason, I didn't start my running training plan in October or November or even December.
Okay.
Let's say I started later.
Yep.
Because I was hurt.
Yep.
Because I didn't have because I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Or because I didn't have the opportunity. I didn't have a number, right? I didn't have a number for the Boston Marathon.
That's right.
And now I got one, and it's January 1st, and one falls into my lap, and I'm like, oh no, I have to.
I got to go buy some sneakers.
I have to train, and I have to run this marathon. Think about that with respect to somebody who, if they didn't start saving for retirement right away, which we see all the time, right?
Not unusual. Yep.
I see all the time. So does that mean that that person can't run a marathon? Does that mean that if I start training later, does that mean that I will not have a successful marathon?
No.
It doesn't, right?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No.
So what are some of the factors that play into it?
They may have a different marathon experience than you and I might have.
That's right.
Right? Now, again, there's a million factors that are going to play into that, right? Part of it is what have they been doing, right? Now, somebody might come to you and they might say, well, you know what? I haven't been training for the marathon, but I've been doing this. I'm a hockey guy, right? And I've been skating, a couple of weeks, a couple of nights during the week with my buddies. So my wind is in pretty good shape. I'm not starting from scratch. I have a couple of things that I can kind of fall back on. Yep. Physically, if they're younger, it's a lot better, a lot easier for somebody to start training in January when they're 38 than when they're 52, right? That's a little harder to get around that.
So let's say they're healthy, right? So let's say I'm a healthy 52-year-old, right? Does that mean even if I start late, am I not going to be able to run the marathon? The answer is no.
Yep.
The answer is no. You could run it. Now, if we liken it to the saving for retirement. So if I start saving for retirement at 45 instead of 25, right?
Yep.
And I want to retire at 65.
Get some catching up to do.
I have catching up to do, right? So how do I catch up? How do I catch up?
You got to train a little harder.
You got to train a little harder.
That's right. That's right.
So I train. So that means I have to take it a bit more seriously, right? I have to.
Correct.
And by taking it seriously, does that mean
you got to make some sacrifices that you may not have had made had you started back in
Somebody
October.
Somebody write this down.
Somebody record this. Somebody record this. So yeah, you're going to make some sacrifices.
Oh, wait, we got somebody to record.
Chris is going to record it. So what are those sacrifices going to look like?
So from the running standpoint, if I may have to make sacrifice in the sense that I have to commit more time to running where otherwise I can't be flippant about it. Like I have to if I have a schedule, I have to do everything possible to stay with my schedule. Now, I may have to run more than I otherwise would, right? Because I have to get to that kind of mileage bank to have a successful retirement, not unlike my savings bank. But I'm older.
Diet and lifestyle,
I was going to say,
may play a much bigger role when you start your training in January than they do when you start your training in October, right? October, you got a real baseline going into January. The random cheeseburger here and there isn't going to mess up your training schedule. 15-year-old Scotch, not going to create a problem for you, right?
I don't think it creates a problem anyway.
Ever.
Maybe
It never
even on race day.
No, never creates a problem.
I mean, there's a hydration thing, but then one could argue,
it's made of water. It's made of water. It's made of water. It's the same thing. So yes, you're right. So those things, those sacrifices, just like somebody who starts later in the game, they have to sit down and they say, look, if I want to get to this, if I want to succeed in the race of retirement, I'm going to have to start cutting out things like going out to eat multiple nights a week. I might have to not drive
vacation.
a $700 a month car payment. I got to dial that back. The vacation trips, those have to come down. I'm going to dedicate all my energies to training for retirement, just like you have to dedicate change your lifestyle to train for the marathon. Absolutely right.
So it's and Jay brought up a good point. Here we go again. That marathon may be different than somebody of the same age who started saving much sooner, right? So let's say when we get to race day or when we get to retirement day, at race day, let's say, and I don't know but make up a number. Let's say I've run 1,000 miles. Versus someone who's run 2,000 training miles, right? So if I have $1 million versus someone who has $2 million, right? Doesn't mean I can't retire with $1 million, right? But I'm not going to have the same flexibility that somebody with $2 million has because if they have more. They have more assets. They have more things that can enable them to have more options.
Well, and then come race day, right? So come race day, the person who had put in the 6 months of training compared to somebody who put in the 4-month training, they're going to have potentially, right, putting other factors aside, they're potentially going to have an easier time of it. The race is going to go better for them. They're going to enjoy the race more, right? It's going to be a much more comfortable run, if you will. And just like if you started your savings late compared to somebody who started their savings early, when you get to retirement, their retirement is a little bit more sure-footed maybe than yours might be because you might have to watch your dollars a little differently than somebody who got a real head start on you and who can say basically, I have more retirement funds sloshing around than I could ever shake a stick at. So, going out to dinner 6 nights a week and staying in a higher end condo complex down in Florida, if you're playing the snowbird game, that's not an issue for us. We don't worry about money in retirement, where you might be taking a little bit of a different approach. They may have a different retirement package. They may be on the pension system, which means they don't have to worry about how much money they spend, because as long as they're taking a breath, they're getting a check.
That's right.
That's different than your plan, which isn't going to work the same exact way.
Now, one more thing. We talked about how preparing for retirement is that marathon prep, but then if God willing, if your retirement is on, then your retirement too could be a marathon. So using the analogy of the guy who ran 1,000 hours versus 2,000 hours, does that necessarily mean that the 2,000-hour guy is going to have a better race?
No,
it does not. Now, he's positioned for it, right?
Yep.
He's positioned for it because he's trained, but as you and I both know, come race day, or come 10 miles into the race, something could go wrong. Your fault, my fault, nobody's fault. Something could go not according to plan.
He steps in a pothole, you don't step in a pothole.
That's right.
You're having a better day.
He reacts differently to heat than you do because it's a hot day.
That's right. It's 85 on race day. You have no idea how he's going to respond to that. Yep.
So part of that whole, of that marathon analogy is that once you get into retirement, it's still going, right?
That's right.
It's still going. You're still prepared. You're still doing things in order to get you to that finish line, to that ultimate finish line, which is when at an age 110, right? So you have to make decisions. You may have to make adjustments. You may say, hey, listen, I thought I was going to run a 4-hour marathon. Right. It ain't happening.
Right.
So I'm going to slow down. I'm going to slow down.
I got to change my tactics.
I'm going to slow down at mile 7 instead of mile 17, because if I don't slow down to mile 17, then guess what? Then you're at Newton Wellesley Hospital, which is where I was when somebody jumped out from behind a tree and hit me in the head with a 2x4 and knocked me down. And every old lady that's run the marathon that they ran past me.
Yep. And the year that so my best time running the marathon was 3:45.
Oh,
and
you're a bullet.
And I felt
like a locomotive.
I felt horrible from mile 2.
Oh.
Physically, though, I felt the worst I've ever felt running a marathon. And it was the best time ever. How that worked out, I have no idea.
We're not sure.
But to your point,
We're not sure.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just race day, right? And you're so terrified leading up to, just like you're terrified as you get close to retirement that something's going to happen to wreck it, leading up to retirement, you're not saying to yourself, you know what, the race is tomorrow, I'm starving, let me just jump into the gas station here and get some sushi. What's the worst that can happen? Because, it's race day tomorrow. It's race day tomorrow, right?
Fettuccine Alfredo,
I mean,
right?
what, raw shellfish? Count me in. Why not? Count me in. Snails, escargot,
I didn't even know.
Two dozen.
I didn't even
know
gas stations sold this.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's right. Wizard fingers, I love them. Rolling around on the rack, count me in, I'll take 6. So yes, just like running your race, you're going to get, at some point, you're going to say, my training has gone great, I feel like $1 million, I think I'm ready, and now I just don't want to, basically shoot myself in the foot here, so I'm going to proceed with caution. Your retirement is going to be the same exact way. You're going to get a handful of years out. You're going to say, I think I'm ready.
How we doing?
I think I'm ready for the race. I'm feeling good. I did the training. We've done the work. The race is ready to go. I want to hit it running. I want to hit the ground running that day. So we're going to proceed with caution from this point forward. That's your analogy right there.
So like anything, no one can predict the future. No one knows what's going to happen. But the more prepared you are, the more, just like in anything in life, if you're a football coach, if you're getting ready for retirement, if you're running, the more prepared you are, the better position you're going to be to succeed.
Focus on the things that are in your control. Those are the things you want to focus on. Focus on what's in your control.
My dad talking to me. Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up here.
Wrap it up. All right, so you know what, Christian, hold this banner up. John's going to run through with his hands up. It's going to say Money in the Law. It's going to break open, and then, that's how it's going to go.
The Money in the Law Marathon.
Nice. Sponsored by. That's right. Sponsored by. That's right.
That's right. Yep. Money in the Law Marathon. Well,
keep your eye out for that.
We're going to cut it short.
Yep.
All right.
Singlets. Yep.
All right. Remember, visit us on moneyinthelaw.net. Give us some comments, some feedback. We'll be
questions. We'll answer them on air. Maybe
anonymously,
maybe not. That's fine. Yep.
All right. We'll see everybody next Saturday on Money in the Law, My FM 101.3, the greatest radio station on God's green earth, and Hollis and Cable Access TV.
Those are the 2 greatest hosts right here.
Here we go.
Have a great night.
We'll see you next week.